I didn't really vote, to be honest. I went along to the hustings in South Shields. There was a panel of people representing all of the parties. I'd never actually even heard of the Green Party. And I remember just sitting there, just daydreaming. And as soon as she spoke, I kind of woke up. I felt validated, I felt seen. And up until then, I never really felt anything in politics benefited me.
Yeah.
And working on those frontline services, I felt like things just got worse.
Yeah.
And I just felt that anyone who got into power could not be trusted. Political power could not be trusted. And I hear that from people. I think I do know the struggles and the strengths of the people in South Tyneside. I've lived in South Tyneside for all of my life and I've raised my children here. I also was brought up on an estate which was one of the most deprived in South Shields. I can identify massively with people from all walks of life in South Tyneside. From my experience of work in food banks, the demand is getting bigger.
Yeah.
It's not stagnating. It's not filling a gap. It's creating something because of the vulnerabilities.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be like that. They should be thriving, not surviving.
Yeah.
That's got to stop.
All over the northeast, people are rolling up their sleeves and quietly changing the places they call home. I'm Jonathan Elmer, and this is Greens Rising, the podcast that celebrates the doers, the grafters, and the everyday leaders creating real change in our communities. Today we've got Annette Chapman, a former nurse, midwife, primary school teacher and lifelong carer who's now stepping into the world of green politics. So Annette has spent decades at the front line, delivering babies, supporting struggling families, nurturing kids in the classroom and safeguarding those who fall through the cracks. She's a natural protector, a relentless litter picker, an animal rescue volunteer and a woman with a huge heart for South Hebburn. If you want to hear what real compassion looks like when it decides to run for office, you're going to love Annette. Annette, you've lived a life steeped in care, nursing, midwifery, teaching, fostering, community work. You spent your whole career caring for people, from NHS wards to primary classrooms. What's the thread that ties all that to politics?
I think working sort of on the front line, being a grassroots worker in the NHS and education, I suppose I kind of was always aware of how much these services were underfunded. Staff have always been overstretched, stressed, just not enough funding for these services. And being aware of that, obviously long before I was ever a Green. So that was probably one of the reasons why I got involved with it.
There's lots of frustration that things could be done better.
Yeah, and I watched things getting worse, which was really frustrating, without a doubt.
It's actually similar to the reason I went into politics. After spending 20 years working in countryside profession, I'd got so many improvements made on the ground in terms of open spaces and wildlife creation, that sort of thing. And then I went to work for a council that just undid all of that, and the people behind it were politicians. Yeah. So angry. It made me want to just become one, actually, just to stop them.
Yeah.
You started as a nurse, then a midwife, then moved into teaching while raising two kids. How has that shaped the way you see the community now?
Having worked in those professions for decades, since I was a teenager, I think I do know the struggles and the strengths of the people in South Tyneside. I've lived in South Tyneside for all of my life and I've raised my children here.
Yeah.
And I also was brought up on an estate which was one of the most deprived in South Shields.
So you've really experienced the real everyday life struggles that people have to...
Yeah, and especially in South Tyneside in particular, and I can kind of identify massively with people from all walks of life in South Tyneside.
Yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
You worked at Hadrian Primary in South Shields and you joked that you've taught kids you also delivered. Mm-hmm. What does that kind of connection do to your sense of responsibility?
It was something I couldn't ever predict. I remember doing my first job as a teacher and children coming up to me. Parents recognised me on the yard and said, I recognise her. I'm sure she was my midwife. And the children would come up to me and say, oh, you helped me to be born, miss, and things like that. When you have to do an icebreaker when you meet in a group and people say they've met someone famous, that's my line. I taught children, I delivered. And, it's been an honour to bring the children into the world safely. And also as a teacher, I hope I've taught them well. And my inclusion role as well meant that I got more involved with children, as in their safety, child protection, special educational needs. That was my other role aside from teaching.
There's been a lot you've packed in, and it's really interesting that your roles, to me, what seems to connect them together is just caring for other people, especially people as they're growing and developing.
Yeah. And I'm hoping really as a Green that I can continue to kind of indirectly or directly affect the lives of people in South Tyneside.
I'm guessing that up until quite recently, you perhaps didn't feel aligned to a particular political party.
No.
But what made you join the Greens and decide to become a councillor?
So I didn't really vote, to be honest, for a long time. I went along to the hustings about 10 years ago in a church in South Shields.
Right.
And I went with my daughter, who was a Labour member, who's now a Green member. And I went along just to keep her company.
Right.
There was a panel of people representing all of the parties.
Yeah.
And Councillor Shirley Ford, who's now the councillor for Clean and East Baldon, represented the Greens. I'd never actually even heard of the Green Party, to be honest. Yeah. And I remember just sitting there, just, daydreaming. And the audience asked questions. And as soon as she spoke, I kind of woke up. I felt validated. I felt seen. When she was speaking, when she was answering those questions, because I thought I wouldn't be able to do it as eloquently as Shirley, but I actually thought to myself, yeah, I agree with everything she's just said.
Well, I think you probably could. And I know Shirley very well, and she's done so much for that area.
Mm-hmm. And after that, I just remember going home and typing out this really long email.
Yeah.
Just telling her, I agree with this point and what you said about that. And up until then, I never really felt anything in politics benefited me.
Yeah.
Again, working on those frontline services, I felt like things just got worse. And I was an NEU rep for many years. And I just felt that anyone who got into power could not be trusted. Political power could not be trusted. And I hear that from people. Anyone who gets in, they'll siphon off all the funds. They'll not look after the most vulnerable. They'll only look after themselves. And that was kind of my approach, because I saw nothing really getting better over time.
Yeah, this is such a common story with so many people who've become disaffected with mainstream politics. You used to shy away from standing as a councillor. You were the election agent in the background, helping things actually keep moving in terms of all of the paperwork behind elections. So what flipped you from I couldn't do that myself to right now you're doing it?
I think I enjoyed being a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
For far too long. I can't hide away a bit. But what changed my mind was I thought, I've got all this experience, all of this knowledge. It'd be a waste not to be able to alchemise that into something I could give to the Green Party.
Yeah.
So even though I did fill in all the paperwork to put myself forward as a councillor, as soon as I sent it off, I started to regret it a bit. I thought, I don't know. It was just lack of confidence, really, and just not sure how I would present. But then Zach came, Zach Polanski, and I thought, I've got to do it now. I've got to do this. I can't shy away. I've got to get cracking and really just learn as I go.
I think that's what attracts people to Green Party candidates, actually, because by and large, we're not career politicians. So when you strip everything back, what values guide the way you show up for your community?
So before I was ever a Green, I was always very much community conscious. And, I was one of those people who would be reporting potholes and literally going on beach cleans, doing anything I could to kind of help and make the place better, safer, cleaner, just more pleasant, and making the most of what we've got. We've got lots of lovely green spaces, we've got a beautiful coastline. Just yesterday, me and Rachel Taylor were tree planting in a local park, and that was the type of thing, it was always part of my nature. It was intrinsic to me, and when I joined the Greens, obviously you could see that I aligned with the Greens straight away. And lots of people do what I do, but it's also good to get shoulder to shoulder with other volunteers who've got a similar heart, who've got a similar enthusiasm and want the same thing.
Yeah.
And volunteers often on the ground.
People want to get stuck in, they want to help. But then there's that barrier as to, can I step up and be a representative of my community? The perfect person to be doing that sort of thing are people that have lived that community. That's the sort of experience you need, isn't it? And we're talking about hope quite a lot at the moment, because in the Green Party, we feel that it's the loss of hope that is so distressing and depressing for people. We want to try and return a sense of hope. What does hope look like to you in a place where people often feel things can't change?
Hope, for me, is just the belief that you can turn things around, no matter how small. I mean, I'm a great fan of Matt Haig, and he writes a lot about hope in his book called The Comfort Book. And he talks about how a tiny bit of hope can totally change somebody's day.
Yes.
a hard day. But again, hope has to be more than a plan. There has to be action. Just taking that step, no matter how small, can make a difference. Nothing might happen overnight. It can be progressive over time, and just that belief that things can get better.
Absolutely. All of these things help people be more hopeful, I think.
Yes.
Most Green councillors, we've knocked on lots of doors because we've had to talk to them about changing the way they vote. What are people actually telling you? What are the issues they bring up? But the second part is, how do you think people are feeling out there? What's the emotional temperature?
They're feeling powerlessness. There's an element of fear. Perhaps nowhere to turn. Things are getting worse. That kind of thing. And, people do feel strongly about local issues.
Yeah.
One of the things I quite enjoyed is when they've talked about the local councillors, when they talk about the Green councillors, you get a lot of positive feedback. So that gives me hope. There is that sort of negative side.
Yeah.
But I think more and more people are warming to the Greens.
Yeah.
Zach Polanski presents his politics. They're accessible. We understand what he's actually talking about. He doesn't use lots of jargon. He's consistent. We're winning more Greens because of him. We've got the membership rising at a great rate. So, there's a kind of group who were like I used to be. What's the point? It's not going to make any difference to me. So I see different kinds of responses.
Yes, it's interesting, isn't it? I think a lot of the response also stems from honesty as well. And people have spent so many years, decades, just sensing that a politician speaking, there might be some hidden agenda. They might not be being entirely honest about what they believe. And that generally connects with the fact that their politics has been in some way captured. I don't think that's a situation with Greens. The only issues that have captured our politics are people and planet, as Zach has said. Something now that's perhaps a little bit more controversial, Annette. I want to ask about reform, especially in places like Hebburn. What's your honest read?
I think in Hebburn is more presence rather than a rise, if you know what I mean, because that was another reason for standing as a Green councillor.
Yeah.
Because I remember thinking, this is all very much getting out of hand.
Yes.
I've got to step up.
I've got to do something about it.
Despite the fact that I'm terrified, I've got to do it. And I feel a little bit better about it now, a little calmer about it.
I think actually also that people are beginning to see through a lot of the misinformation. Reform have tried to connect the impacts on people's quality of life with immigration. I think people are just beginning to see through that now.
Totally.
So you talked about everything bringing people together now seems to be run by charities or volunteers because the system's been hollowed out.
Yeah.
So what worries you the most when you look at how our public services are coping?
I don't think they're coping at all. Understaffed, undervalued. There's a lot of burnout, sickness. So then you've got staff who are not qualified, stepping up to take on roles they're not trained to do.
Yeah.
And lots of supply staff, agency staff in hospitals. We see this a lot. It's very expensive. It's not sustainable.
It's so important that charities are doing the important work that they do. But then you ask the question, the fact that there's an increasing need for charities to pick up the slack, it says something as well, doesn't it?
Well, from my experience of working in food banks, the demand is getting bigger. Where I live in Hebburn, there are some excellent charities, CICs running.
Yeah.
In South Tyneside alone, there's a lot of charities that support women in particular. They do amazing work. And I think communities are coming together because of their vulnerabilities. And it shouldn't be like that. They should be thriving, not surviving.
Yeah.
That's got to stop. The survival thing's got to stop.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it kind of brings me on to some of my final questions, actually, Annette. If your Green Vision landed, what do you feel your community would look like?
I think accessibility to public services. So it would be good for people not to worry about their health, they'd feel safe. And people would feel a sense of hope, calm. Because where there's poverty, there's mental and emotional health issues and social issues. And I would like to see that all change.
Yeah.
It's a big ask, but I believe it'll happen. I have hope that it will happen.
I think you're right. It can happen.
Yeah.
So finally, what would you say to somebody listening who's joined the party but doesn't feel ready to step up yet?
I would say try and be active or learn a little bit more about the party you've joined. So for me, I was starting from scratch. even though my values aligned with the Greens, I didn't know a lot about politics, as I've already said. So I would go to the odd meeting. Even now, when I sit in Green meetings, I do learn a lot from more experienced Green members and the councillors. What I used to, because I was working full time and really busy, I would do a delivery round just as a one-off during my holidays, and that kind of escalated because I quite enjoyed doing that. Kill three birds with one stone. So what I'd do is I'd do a delivery round, get my steps in, and listen to a good podcast or audio book. But I think be active, take part, even if it's just a one-off. Just do something small and see if you like it. See if you like doing beach cleans or whatever, or tree planting. Try it.
I think you're quite right.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really lovely having you here. Fascinating to hear about your career and what sort of motivated you and brought you into the Green Party and all of the hard work you're now doing. And I hope everything goes well for you in the future.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks to Annette for sharing such a heartfelt and powerful journey. If her story reminded you of why community matters, tell someone, share the episode, get involved. This is Greens Rising. Until next time.